Hi, folks. Welcome to I Write Radio broadcast on a Saturday, normally our day off. But breaking news has overtaken us. We're going to dedicate this program to our hero, our Brexiteer extraordinaire, and Boris Johnson's boss, Dominic Cummings. Jimmy, let you have first bite of the cherry of this one.
Well, weren't we all surprised when the news kicked in last night? Well, the first I heard of it was Laura Kuenssberg actually coming out to defend Dominic Cummings. I hadn't even heard what he'd done yet, but she was that quick off the mark that she was the first one out to defend him, which is noticeable in itself. But Dominic has chosen, back in the day, end of March, I believe, to drive 260 miles to his parents' house in Durham to self-isolate there. Ostensibly, because he and his wife were both coming down with the virus, they wanted to go up there so that their 4-year-old son could be looked after. Well, that's already kind of been blown apart. For a start, Mrs. Cummings, or what's her name? Mary Wakefield. Her brother lives in London, so he could have easily picked up his nephew and looked after him for a few days whilst they were going through the worst of it. But no, didn't happen. Frankly, I think the three of us are all of the same opinion. We're raging, and we're possibly even more raging at the way that the Tories have decided to come out and brazenly defend the actions of this man.
Jacob Rees-Mogg came out with a cracker. He tweeted that it was the actions of a good father. So I tweeted him back and said, Jacob, you might be qualified to judge what a good nanny is, but you're not qualified to judge what a good father is.
Splendid effort, Norrie.
These guys live in a different world, a totally different world. Stuart?
Well, I've been getting personal messages from listeners, viewers, and they were surprised that we were going to record today and pleased. So we will have an audience ready and waiting for this. The entire non-Tory loving, arse-licking mob that run the country, everybody else is absolutely appalled at what's going on. We've got Piers Morgan challenging Boris Johnson to deliver his own afternoon coronavirus briefing this afternoon and explain why his boss is allowed to do anything he likes, and the rest of us have to obey the rules. But then again, it's only 2 days ago that Boris was let off a corruption charge because they managed to shred the evidence for him corrupting somebody called Jenny Arcuri, basically a high-class prostitute. He paid her millions, thousands of pounds or something of public money so that he could shag her. And
that's going a bit far.
Yeah, alleged.
He had an affair with her, apparently. I think she's admitted to it. And he
paid her
on the London council payroll.
Yeah, but he paid her thousands of pounds with public money. What's that? She's a tart. If that's how else do you define that? Anyway, they shredded the evidence. Look at the state of the police in this country, shredding evidence. God. So they're never going to give in on this.
Well, one of the interesting aspects of this is the Durham police have said that they did visit and spoke to a member of the family. Now, Cummings backers are coming out and saying that just isn't true.
Yeah,
so somebody's telling porkies.
Number 10 came out and said that didn't happen. Cummings has come out since and said that it didn't happen. So basically, are Number 10 Downing Street and Dominic Cummings maligning the Durham police in order to save Dominic Cummings' position?
I would imagine
police are adamant that did happen.
I would imagine it will be hair splitting to the nth degree. Oh, we thought you meant me or my wife. Oh, he did speak to my dad, my mum, my brother, my sister, whatever. They'll have spoken to somebody who is in the family, and they'll have decided that it means immediate family.
Nori, you played us a piece before we came on that's a bit long, so I think we're going to attach it at the end or underneath or whatever, but it's in Mary Wakefield's own words. And basically she's reading out an article that she'd written for The Spectator. But in that article,
which was titled Lockdown in London.
Aye, it was. Aye, exactly. And she never once mentions Durham. But what she also does give away is that their son was in the home that they were in, because their son, she talks about him being nicely dressed up in his wee doctor's outfit and administering Ribena. So their excuse that they went to Durham so the kid could be looked after by somebody else is an abject lie if the child was in the same house as them, administering to his father. It's utter nonsense, the whole thing.
I don't think we should focus too much on their excuses, because they're going to all these excuses are all going to fall down. Basically, they made up the rules, and then they believe they're above the rules.
Aye.
And if this is allowed to carry on, I'm sorry, there will be I think there will be quite a lot of people in the Labour Party might turn. I'm actually appalled that Keir Starmer hasn't come out and demanded that he's sacked.
Yeah, I think Labour are playing a bit of a strange waiting game here to see how the public, how the penny drops to the public on this one, where public support is. I think they should just come out like the SNP have done, and like even the wishy-washy Liberal Democrat leader came out and actually had a pop at him this morning. Badly, right enough. I mean, he kind of got his butts slapped a wee bit on Good Morning, no, it wasn't, it was Breakfast Time, BBC, but at least they've came out and said that Cummings is a disgrace and should go.
I mean, if Cummings doesn't go on this, you can forget it. Any sort of integrity in Westminster politics, especially the Tory party, is a thing of the past. It's a hindrance.
I think I'm sorry, I've seen it. It is past. I bet he doesn't go. Shall we have a wee bet on it? I bet you a tenner that he doesn't go. Dominic will still be here next month.
Okay, I'll hedge that by saying it's going to be dependent on what the front pages of the Sundays say. If this lasts into Monday, I think he'll have to go.
Yeah, I don't think Boris can afford for him to go though, because of the platform. Because of the platform that his missus has. His missus will talk about knowing where the skeletons are buried, mate. His missus will immediately write an excoriating article about everything that's happened in the last 2 or 3 months within that Tory government. And she'll be fending off checks as to who gets to print that on their front page. Every newspaper in the Western world will want that article.
Is she an editor at The Spectator?
She's a commissioning editor, mate. She's
Right.
Old school posh. She comes from a great long line of English posh. So she's one of these people that got that kind of job just because of who she knows.
Well, if she's a commissioning editor, she's signing checks, basically, effectively, isn't she? This is where you get the money and you don't.
And let's remember The Spectator. Let's remember who that is. That's Fraser Nelson. Neil. That's Andrew Neil. Aye, that's.
Well, funnily enough, Andrew Neil was getting chased, I think, by Ian Dunt for a comment about the accuracy of the piece in The Spectator that was headed "Lockdown in London," and Fraser Nelson has now blocked Tony Blair's spin doctor,
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell, for basically asking the same question.
Well, Andrew Neil's gone particularly quiet. He's almost as quiet as a Scottish Tory on Twitter this morning. I mean, the Scottish Tories have just disappeared. Not one of them has raised their head above the parapet. Presumably, they're all sitting by the phone waiting for the instruction as to how they've to play this, because after their pile-on with Catherine Calderwood, who I would venture to suggest committed far less of a breach of rules than Dominic Cummings did. Well, I think the minute they come out, they're going to get stomped on for hypocrisy, aren't they?
The Tories have now asked for the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon,
Jean Freeman,
Catherine, and Jean Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
None of whom have done anything on this scale.
Absolutely not. I mean, what's...
Yeah, Well,
No,
I think we're going to, just to put it in a bit of perspective. When I first heard this story last night, I went on to Twitter, because trending on Twitter tells you what what is everybody talking about in social media in the country. And United Kingdom trends had Durham on the top of the list. So Durham it was obviously the story about Dominic Cummings was top of the list. Nowhere in the top 10 trending phrases was Dominic Cummings' name. In fact, Laura Koonsberg was number 3. Apparently.
Now.
Oh, I'm looking at it now.
Catherine Calderwood was in there as well.
Yeah, we've got. I suppose it is now. There's a picture of Dominic Cummings number 1. But basically, you start wondering how come it was obviously the biggest story all last night. Dominic Cummings' name should have been trending right on the top, and yet it was. Well, the editor, the UK editor, don't forget, is actually a spy, works for GCHQ, the Twitter editor for the UK. Now, he seems to be in the loop for, if you want a tinfoil hat and you want a conspiracy, look at it from there.
He's resigned one of the posts.
Which one?
I don't know whether he's resigned. Do you resign as a spy? I don't know.
Don't think you ever can.
Don't you just get shot in a field somewhere?
No, that's only if you're arms specialist who says the wrong thing to a government.
All right, okay. Or a scientist who manages to...
Talking of scientists, there was a lovely wee aside. I noticed, I'll just have to check the name here, Professor Susan Meeke, University College London. She's a member of SAGE. And I'm assuming she's one of the members of SAGE that Dominic Cummings was shouting and bawling at a couple of weeks ago, because she went on to Sky News this morning and absolutely stabbed him in the front. Just pointed out to the Sky News boy, he broke one rule here, and another rule there. So he broke 3 rules. You can't get away from that. He can't get around that. He broke his own rule.
Yeah, but he's above the law.
Well, what they're telling us, Stuart, what they're actually saying, they're brazenly telling us that these rules, these guidelines and these laws do not apply to them. They only apply to us.
Yeah. I'm surprised you're surprised.
Well, I don't think we are surprised. I think maybe my surprise comes from the fact he was so stupid about it.
Yeah, but nothing's going to be... That's because they know they're going to get away with it. Nothing's going to happen.
Look, no, I'm more surprised at the reaction. They're willing to undermine all the medical evidence, all the medical instructions that they've been giving people.
Okay, but let me finish, Jimmy. Come in. I can hear the exasperation in your voice, and so can the listeners and viewers. Look, 2016, what happened? We had a Brexit referendum, which all the evidence says was fixed. Nobody was charged with anything. Ever since then, Dominic Cummings and that crew have been involved. They get away with it then. Why should they suddenly have to go now just over a trip to Durham?
Now, let's be clear. After they won the referendum, Cummings went on a holiday, assuming that Boris and Michael Gove would sort out which one of them, well, Boris was going to be leader, Michael Gove was going to be deputy leader. When he's on holiday, Gove changes his mind, stabs him in the back. Theresa gets power, and Dominic Cummings was frozen out for a couple of years. That's why he's not going to let go now, because he climbed to the top of the greasy pole and somebody knocked him down once. He's back up there now, and he ain't going to let go unless he's dragged kicking and screaming into the gutter where he should be.
Okay, let's get a bit parochial. Is this good for the Scottish independence?
I honestly,
it's another nail in the Tories' coffin, isn't it? It's going to, however it works out, if they manage to hang on to Dominic Cummings, which is possible, then what we have here is proof positive that Conservatives, and by the way, we all know this, but proof positive right in front of the public who maybe haven't thought that the Conservatives are corrupt, they're crooked, and they're only interested in looking out for themselves.
I would call them criminals.
Well, I mean, they certainly tell lots of porkies. See Ruth Davidson's claim of higher care home deaths in Scotland's been blown out of the water by the London School of Economics. They've done a piece that proves that English care home deaths are higher than Scottish ones, which is just another lie.
Well, Ruth gets to go. That's the problem, mate. Ruth gets to go on the telly and tell these lies all the time. She's never challenged. She's never questioned on her assertions. The whole thing with Cummings, though, Carol Cadwallader's got a decent Twitter thread running now that's worth a look, just pointing out just how much public money and public contracts have been handed to friends of Dominic Cummings and friends of cabinet ministers, particularly since the emergency powers went into place. And these public contracts are no longer put out to tender. They're just handed over to these big conglomerates like, you know, you can.
Well, is the $250,000 that was dashed against the wall for the app, was that not a pal of Cummins?
I thought that was 250 million.
Sorry, 250 million, you're right.
There's billions being handed out, mate. You know the companies we're talking about. Deloitte, they started out as an accountancy firm. Now they're getting handed billion-pound contracts to run contact tracing in England. What do they know about contact tracing? And
then to run all these testing facilities at the airports.
Exactly. The ones that are getting shut, well, the one at Gartnavel got shut down because nobody was bloody using it. But how much did Deloitte get for setting that up?
Will it make a difference?
Probably not, mate. This is possibly, as Stuart pointed out yesterday, is possibly the most corrupt government the UK's ever seen. And certainly with these emergency powers, they can hand these contracts out and there's no scrutiny on them. You've got to wonder, remember we were talking about the contracts that go in, the American Free Trade Deal and these trade courts. You've got to wonder what kind of clauses Deloitte, for example, have in a contract. Once they've signed the deal, they're probably guaranteed that money regardless of how badly they perform.
I'm thinking here.
Sure, but when you look at the companies that have been handed, for example, the franchises in the railway, when they mess up these contracts, they hand it back to the government. They didn't hand the money back, do they?
No.
I'm thinking here that thinking about all these dodgy contracts. Remember Chris Grayling? God, that sounds like a lifetime ago. Mm-hmm. And they just hung on to him. The question arises, having negotiated a corrupt contract with a business person, with a business, who both sides could send each other to jail if they spill the beans.
Aye.
So there is a very sound reason for none of them to talk.
A sound vested interest for them keeping quiet, keeping stoom, and collecting the big payout at the end of the day, regardless.
And you know the connections between Tory donors and these companies are rarely scrutinised in depth. I mean, it might be individuals that are handing the money over, but they've got a piece of these companies.
Well, there you go, Norrie. There was the figure came out yesterday that last April was the most money that the British government had borrowed in any month ever. I wonder how much of that is going on these dodgy contracts.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt, but huge amounts of it. I mean, I can remember when the Henry VIII powers were being talked about and the promises that were made that they would only be used in extremis and not to worry, you would get a chance to scrutinise them and all the rest of it. Has it come to the point where the only important thing to the Tory party is the Tory party, not the government of the UK? Are the Tory party now at the position where everything is about saving the Tory party's power base?
Yes, it hasn't changed. That's been that all my life.
Well, remember the Tory party supported the welfare state way back.
Kicking and screaming.
Well, they maybe didn't have a choice, but they did. So the change that I see is that it's not about government. It's not about governing well. It's about being in a position to govern regardless
Norrie,
of outcome
Norrie,
of your decisions.
maybe they believe their own press. Maybe they genuinely believe that an 80-seat majority guarantees them 10 years, so they can do whatever they fucking well like in the first few years. I don't think an 80-seat majority guarantees them 10 years. In the past, 80-seat majorities have been overturned without any problem. My God, far bigger majorities than 80 have been overturned. But maybe they actually believe this nonsense, that Labour can't touch them. And mind, they've still got a wee bit of gerrymandering to go where they fix the constituents to make it even more difficult for Labour to beat them in the next election. But right now, they don't care. They're just filling their boots.
Did you catch Kevin McKenna's piece in the Herald today?
I read part of it. It was pretty good, actually, aye.
Scottish elites. Well, that's times 10 south of the border.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, mate. And when you
so
think
incestuous.
Well, again, as I say, Dominic Cummings' wife is extraordinarily well born, shall we say. Laura Kuenssberg's husband is extraordinarily well born. Are we surprised that these people hang out in their wee cliques and actually think they are far, far better than the plebs way below them?
Is that the line to finish on?
I'm looking at Alistair Campbell's tweet. Hello, Fraser Nelson. Keen to know whether he's the editor of The Spectator. When you ran Mary Wakefield, that's Dominic Cummings' wife, when you ran Mary Wakefield London lockdown piece about her and her husband, you were aware that it should have said Durham lockdown. Keen to know whether Spectator will be investigating or correcting.
I think we will finish there, and I will play the. This comes from the 24th of April. This is a piece that Dominic Cummings' wife did for the Today programme about being ill with coronavirus.
We think it's a Spectator article, and she's just reading it, don't we?
I think so.
Do listen out to that lovely religious blurb at the end to make her holier than thou. Because she's a liar in the whole piece and try to make out that she's not.
Well, the thing about it is that there are, I think, 3 different things she says that are now being disputed by her husband for his reasons for going to Durham. Anyway, I'll play out with this piece, folks, and we'll catch you tomorrow. No doubt.
Yeah. Durham.
Durham, 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 Durham.
From people who have recovered from coronavirus. Yesterday, the playwright David Hare described his horrible experience of being ill with it. Mary Wakefield is the commissioning editor of The Spectator, where she's written about her own experience. Her husband, Dominic Cummings, is the Prime Minister's chief advisor. Here are some of her reflections.
Uncertainty is the hallmark of the coronavirus. When you've got it, the sense of medieval unknowing only deepens. Is this definitely it? Will it get worse? Will it come back? My version of the virus began with a nasty headache and a grubby feeling of unease, after which I threw up on the bathroom floor. That's disgusting, Ma, said my 4-year-old son, handing me a towel with a look of patronising distaste. I've never known a bug treat its victims so differently. My friends have reported stabbing sore throats, a loss of taste and smell, and numbness in their fingertips. One slight but sad effect of this great variation in symptoms is that it makes phoning friends to share corona stories peculiarly unsatisfying. Weren't the muscle aches awful? Oh, you didn't get them. No sore throat for me. Oh well. That evening, as I lay on the sofa, a happy thought occurred to me. If this was the virus, then my husband, who works 16-hour days as a rule, would have to come home. I let myself imagine a fortnight in bed with mild symptoms, chatting to dawn and sun through an open door. More fool me. My husband did rush home to look after me. He's an extremely kind man, whatever people assume to the contrary. But 24 hours later, he said, I feel weird, and collapsed. I felt breathless, sometimes achy, but Dom couldn't get out of bed. Day in, day out, for 10 days he lay doggo with a high fever and spasms that made the muscles lump and twitch in his legs. He could breathe, but only in a limited, shallow way. After a week, we reached peak corona uncertainty. Day 6 is a turning point, I was told. That's when you either get better or head for ICU. But was Dom fighting off the bug, or was he heading for a ventilator? Who knew? I sat on his bed, staring at his chest, trying to count his breaths per minute. The little oxygen reader we bought on Amazon indicated he should be in hospital. But his lips weren't blue, and he could talk in full sentences, such as, "Please stop staring at my chest, sweetheart." My son, in his doctor's uniform, administered Ribena with the grim insistence of a Broadmoor nurse. And this might be my only really useful advice for other corona parents or single mothers with preschoolers. Get out the doctor's kit. Make it your child's job to take your temperature. Any game that involves lying down is a good game. Just as Dawn was beginning to feel better, it was reported that Boris was heading in the other direction, into hospital. I've been a slack Christian during this era of biblical plague. Churches are shut, even Catholic churches, and somehow that makes more difference than I thought it would. One of the reasons I converted was because the doors of Catholic churches were always open, the sanctuary lamp lit. And now they're closed, it feels as if someone's turned off the spiritual stopcock. But what is there to do for the sick now, except pray? I got to my knees for Boris, and found to my surprise that my prayers flowed easily, as if carried along in a current of others.
Mary Wakefield of The Spectator.
Well, nice to finish with. Thanks for listening, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. And as I say, we'll catch you tomorrow. Cheers for now. Cheers, Jimmy.
Cheers, Nari.